So I've had a lot of videos and news come across my news feed regarding the movie Sound of Freedom, and then there have been interviews with Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel, and this huge propaganda around outing Hollywood regarding child trafficking. And what I've come to understand is that this is a distraction, first of all. I'm not saying that Hollywood is not responsible for certain things. I'm not denying that Hollywood is involved in trafficking. I don't know anything about it. I'm also not going to get caught up in this propaganda or narrative that is being portrayed, because I want to tell you something very clearly about what's going on here. What this is a distraction from the Catholic Church. All of these people, by the way, key players, are Catholic, promoting the Catholic Church, promoting their devotionals, promoting their doctrines, and they are doing this in such a way to rebrand the Catholic Church, to say, oh, these things just started at this point. There was never this kind of filth in the Catholic Church. It started in the 1960s. All of a sudden, it's become corrupt. No, that's not the truth. That is not the truth. The truth is that harlot has been corrupt since the day it was established, changing God's set times, changing his Sabbaths, leading you away from his holy days, his new moons, his calendar, leading you to an image of the cross, not the significance of the cross, but an image of the cross, idolatry of human beings, setting up little statues, kissing them, bowing down to them, counterfeit holidays such as Christmas, pagan holidays, and turning them into something that is supposedly Christian. The word says that Babylon the Great, who we know as the Catholic Church based on Daniel 7 and Revelation 17, we know it undoubtedly that the Catholic Church, or papal Rome, is the harlot that is riding the beast, is the antichrist, and that Babylon the Great is the Catholic Church, that she has prostitute daughters that bore out of her, prostitute churches that bore out of her, and that she is also the mother of the abominations of the earth. Oh, the mother of the abominations of the earth. Well, let's review a few of those, shall we? I've already listed out what this Antichrist has done in terms of changing God's times and setting itself up to be God. This harlot has persecuted, tortured, and murdered God's people, both Jews and Christians alike, forcing Jews to wear yellow bonnets, kidnapping their children, making them live in ghettos, torturing and murdering Christians, lighting them on poles during their counterfeit All Saints Holy Day, using human torches to light their town. And that's how they celebrated All Saints Day. That's what was going on when God sent the Lisbon earthquake and tsunami and fires in 1755. That's what they were doing. Feeding Christians to wild animals, torturing them, and burning them at the stake, lighting their towns. That was their entertainment. They have always been horrible. They have always been disgusting and filthy. Now, if you want to know anything that the Catholic Church has done with regard to children and trafficking and slavery, it's well documented. The Catholic Church spearheaded the transatlantic slave trade because sugar was a high commodity and they needed workers to collect that sugar. Columbus. Who funded Columbus's voyage? Who supported Columbus's capturing of slaves? He looked around at the native people and he thought they'd make good slaves. His voyage was funded by Queen Isabella and the Catholic Church. They were in total support of it because that's what the Catholic Church has done. They conquer, they colonize, they claim to Christianize, and really they have no interest in Christianizing anyone. What they have done is conquer and adapt all of the pagan practices and pagan gods into Christianity. That's where you got Easter. That's where you got Christmas. No, those are not Christian holidays or holy days. They are pagan holidays. You want to know where the Lady of Guadalupe came from? Or the Virgin of Guadalupe? It's an Aztec goddess. When it was used As a title for Mary, the maternal aspect of the Aztec goddess could be read into the Spanish Marian cult by Nahua Christians. So they conquer, they adapt the pagan gods. That's how those end up in counterfeit Christianity, as well as those things that they're calling Christian holidays. As they've gone around conquering, what they have done is taken the weakest and most oppressed and disadvantaged populations, children, women, the poor, brought them into captivity, stolen, kidnapped their children from them, stripped them of their cultures, thrown children into orphanages, to be murdered, to be raped, to be abused by filthy, perverted priests and nuns, not just priests. Women who were unwed or young mothers have gone into their facilities and had their babies, given birth to their babies, and had their babies stolen from them, taken from them, told that they cannot hold their baby, taken from them by nuns, to be raised by somebody else who is not their mother, who is not the one that God gave that baby to then go into one of these orphanages and be murdered, raped, abused. Is this the mother of abominations? These cases are well documented. You want to find them? Go on the SNAP website, SNAP. This is a worldwide organization, and it stands for Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. That's kind of strange, isn't it? That there's a worldwide organization for those abused by priests in the Catholic Church. So this is not like a few bad apples crept in. This is a bad tree. This is a tree that produces pedophiles, perverts, rapists, murderers. And yet, there's a movie, The Sound of Freedom, that is intended to distract from the abominations of this Catholic harlot. They're awful quiet, aren't they? I mean, this is a worldwide power. They're awful quiet about trafficking. Why are they so quiet about trafficking? I wonder if it would bring attention on them if they said anything. They're outright cowards. They will not say anything. And it seems to be a prerequisite. If you want to be in power in the Catholic Church, then you need to have proven worthy as one who will not address these issues, which is exactly what Francis did when he was in Buenos Aires. When he was cardinal in Buenos Aires, he ignored and continues to ignore the cries for help from the children being abused under his watch as cardinal. He continues to do it, and he shuffled around priests to protect the priests at the expense of these children. So you tell me, why all of a sudden, where have these people been? Where have they been? Why all of a sudden is there a movie and something to gain? And while they're promoting this movie, now you got everybody coming out of the woodwork. My goodness, Ashton Kutcher is saying, oh, I watched a movie of a child being raped. How can someone even watch something like that? Like, you have to do something inside of your soul in order to watch something like that. There's something messed up in a person who can even watch that kind of a video. Do you need to watch that in order to advocate? Do you need to watch that in order to know what's right or that this is going on? That is so sickening. Mira Sorvino. Oh, where'd you come from? She's talking about it. Blake Lively. She's talking about it. Where were these people a minute ago? Like before there was something to gain. Are they advocating or are they promoting? Are they trying to jump on some bandwagon? And what is God doing in all of this? What is the Catholic Church doing in all of this? What they're doing is the same thing that they did when people were pointing at the Catholic Church and saying, this is the Antichrist. We know this is the Antichrist. We see the fruit. We know the word. That is the Antichrist. And they commissioned a Catholic theologian named Tertullian. And Tertullian wrote up a doctrine that the Antichrist is a man. And that is the doctrine that you've probably been hearing all your life, that the Antichrist is a man. But you know what? We know very clearly who the Antichrist is because God has given us a word that he wants us to know. He has not given us a word in vain. He wants us to know who the Antichrist is. And I demonstrated for you on several of these videos that the Antichrist is papal Rome. It is a woman riding a beast. It is a church riding government. That church is controlling government, not the other way around. That church has prostitute daughters that are bore out of her, prostitute churches that continue in her abominations. And you see the fruit of that. You see it very, very clearly today. It's probably part of the reason you're on this channel, because you're so disenchanted and disgusted with what's going on in these harlot churches. They're starting to look a lot like their mother, aren't they? As they mature, they look just like her, don't they? Counterfeit tithing, the image of the cross, celebrating Easter and Christmas. They don't even know about God's holy days. Counterfeit Sabbath, Sunday, counterfeit tithing, leading you back to the law that was fulfilled through sacrifice. You're not sacrificing animals anymore. Why are you still offering up a tenth of everything you make? You know what that's called in Daniel 11? It's called the tax that's imposed in order to maintain her royal splendor. You see the riches of these harlots? So what were they doing with Tertullian? No, we're not the Antichrist. Look over here, look over here. And then they hide. Did you know that that's where that doctrine came from? Did you know that that was a Catholic theologian who did that? Do you know that these people are promoting Catholicism? Jim Caviezel, Mark Wahlberg, and Mel Gibson. Did you know that Mel Gibson is trying to rebrand the Catholic Church as a place for good? Did you know that it is satanic for anyone to think that they can play Christ in a movie? And yet that's exactly what Jim Caviezel did with Mel Gibson. And now Jim Caviezel, in his delusion, has this Messiah complex and wants you to associate him with Christ, wants you to give him the same authority as you've given Christ. In fact, maybe even more. Maybe he wants to usurp the authority of Christ. So what is the Catholic Church doing? Make no mistake. The Catholic Church has a lot of influence, and they'll plant little ideas and commission people to carry out their dirty work, but they're never on the front lines. They never go on the front line. Let me ask you something. Worldwide power. Why did Pope Pius take so long to make a stand, even though it was a weak, cowardly stand, against what was going on during the Holocaust? Well, it's no secret that the Catholic Church has persecuted Jews for many, many years. It is no secret that Hitler was touting his Catholic faith and his anti-Semitic beliefs rooted in Catholicism. They stripped Jews of everything, forced them to live in ghettos, made them wear yellow bonnets in order to identify them, kidnapped their children. Was Pope Pius going to say something? Was he going to take a stand during all of that? No. They wait until other people take the stand, and then they come in once the narrative has been played out. Is that what God's people do? Make no mistake. These people have been commissioned to draw up the narrative that they are drawing right now, because the Catholic Church is the biggest trafficking ring there has ever been on this earth. You know how I know? Because the word in Revelation talks about this harlot and human beings sold as slaves. And it associates these abominations with the Catholic Church. The article I'm going to pull from right now is from the Daily Mail. It is entitled, "Who is Mel to Preach? Gibson says the Catholic Church needs to do some house cleaning, but fails to address his own anti-Semitism." So here's the summary. Mel Gibson says he believes the Catholic Church should undergo a house cleaning following years of scandals that they have destroyed its reputation. The Catholic actor is soon to star in a faith-based redemption movie, Father Stu, which recalls Father Stuart Long, the life of a boxer turned priest. Gibson said his involvement in the movie is part of an effort to reframe the church as a place for good. Let me read that again to you. Gibson said his involvement in the movie is part of an effort. So there's an effort. So there's a movement to reframe the church as a place for good. Look, I've approached this from many different angles. I've shown you, as I see things coming up in the news, etc., I have framed it within so that you can understand the things that I have told you, the things I've taught you in Scripture regarding the Antichrist and the key players in these times. I've spoken with you about Europe. I've spoken with you about NATO. I've spoken with you about the United States as the false prophet, about counterfeit Christianity and this movement of Christian nationalism combining church and state, which is a campaign for the Antichrist. I've talked with you about all of the things that are unfolding. I'm giving you a different aspect now, because when it happens, you are going to be shocked to see how quickly it comes together. How do I know that? Because the word says it, that you are going to be shocked when you see that antichrist rise. But if you are wise, you will listen to the things that I'm telling you right now about how it is rising, how people are giving over power to this harlot. And she's just sitting there. She's just sitting and waiting for everyone to it's ridiculous. She doesn't even have to do anything. The devil's just setting this up, handing it over on a silver platter. But you know what? It isn't even the devil who's he's not in control. God's fulfilling his will. So Gibson said his involvement in the movie is part of an effort to reframe the church as a place for good. It's not a place for good. It's never been a place for good. Not for God's people anyway. Gibson is a passionate member of the Catholic traditionalist movement. Okay? He's part of a movement. The Catholic sect rejects the reforms of the Second Vatican Council in 1964 and 65. Now, look. So there's something that happened in 1964 and 65, which I'm not even that familiar with, but what I do know is that the Catholic Church has been doing evil long before 1964 and 65. So this guy does not know what he's talking about. Neither does this movement. Gibson has been accused of anti-Semitism and racism, including infamous rant with LAPD officer in 2006. Mel Gibson said he believes the Catholic Church should undergo house cleaning following years of scandals that have blighted its reputation in an interview where he failed to mention his own off-color controversies. Now look, all of us have said stupid things in our lives, myself included. We all have stuff. None of us has a clean past. The problem is with Mel Gibson is that he is never repentant. He will not acknowledge the things that he's done. And in fact, when he's questioned on what he has done, he'll turn it back onto the interviewer. I've watched him do it. He'll turn it back on the interviewer and say, like, you need to grow up because, that was how many years ago, like, get over it kind of thing. And it's like, if you're not repentant, like, you don't acknowledge what you've done, no one's going to get over it. And how can you claim to be in Christ when you don't even acknowledge the things that you've done? Like, that tells me that you haven't acknowledged it with him, and that's why you can't acknowledge it with human beings. I know what that's all about because I do that. And frankly, if you are set up as a public figure and you want to continue to be a public figure, then you should know that you're going to be questioned and that the things that you do are going to be in the spotlight. And until you acknowledge them, they're going to continue to be brought up. So the attitude that everyone else should grow up is ridiculous. Someone who is a public figure and doesn't understand these things needs to grow up. Gibson, 66, who was raised as a sedevacantist traditionalist Catholic, believes that a behind-the-scenes cleanup would help to restore the church's standing. The Passion of the Christ director is about to star in a faith-based biopic, Father Stu. The film, which is due for release at Easter this April, follows the life of Father Stuart Long, a boxer turned priest who inspires countless people during his journey from self-destruction to redemption. Okay, so he's done Passion of the Christ. Now he's done Sound of Freedom in order to distract from the many atrocities of the Catholic Church. You want to go after someone if you're a true advocate of child traffic, for children who are being trafficked. Why are you not even mentioning the Catholic Church and what they've done? So you're going to hear what he has to say about the Catholic Church, how he defends that harlot. Gibson told Extra that his involvement in the movie is part of an effort to reframe the church as a place for good. So there's his agenda. He's part of an effort, and he's also part of a movement. This is the language that has been used, an effort and a movement. He is being used for something, and you need to know that. Because what happens when Hollywood puts out a movie is all of a sudden everyone becomes an advocate of this thing. Like they're too dumb to think for themselves, that they are being brainwashed, that they are being gaslighted, that they are being, look over here at the shiny object. They're being distracted from who the real enemy is. We need to get back to basics, Gibson explained. Of course, it's lamentable, all the stuff that's gone on. The stuff, right? The stuff. Yeah, that's all it is. People's lives, the innocence of children. It's just stuff. Of course, it's lamentable. Like any institution, it's capable of being corrupt. Capable of being corrupt. No, the Catholic institution has always been corrupt. When you're calling yourself Christian and you're going against the very word and the very God that you claim to serve and adulterating it and leading other people to prostitute themselves to the world and to false gods and the holidays that are lifted up to those false gods, that is an institution that is born out of corruption. And he goes on to say, and it's sad to see, but as always, I don't think it's the institution that's at fault. Oh, okay. So the institution of Hollywood is at fault, but not Catholicism. And, Gibson seems to be pretty articulate when it comes to scapegoating somebody else, but when it comes to talking about the Catholic Church, it's just stuff, it's lamentable, it's capable of being corrupt, and, it's sad to see. Is this an advocate? Is this an advocate for children, or is he just promoting something? He's promoting an ideology. He's promoting his movie because he's greedy. He has no interest in truth. And you're going to see more as to the fruit that's coming from this tree. I think it's a lot of people they get in. What? I mean, did the Pope just get in? These people were appointed. They were trained. They are trained pedophiles. They are indoctrinated. Did I tell you that SNAP, that organization is just in the United States or just in Peru? That is a worldwide organization. Worldwide. To support people who have been abused, who have been victimized by this Catholic harlot. I think it's a lot of people they get in. Institutions are as good or bad as the people in it running it. Well, he just conflicted. He just contradicted himself, didn't he? Are as good or as bad as the people running it? Okay, so let's step back from this for a minute. The Catholic Church claims that the Pope is the vicar of God, that he's as good as God on earth, okay? And that he has authority to change the things that God has established, like as though God made a mistake, as though God needs a human being to correct him. If that's the doctrine of the Catholic harlot, how did these people get in? How did they get in? How did they get appointed? And he just said that the institution is either as good or as bad as the people running it, so that means that the institution is no good. Goes on to say it's having a bit of a rugged time right now. And my question is, who's hiring? The bishops? I don't think it's Jesus. Is it Pope Francis? Who's hiring Francis? Is it Pachamama? That's an Inca goddess, apparently. During the interview, he glazed over his own controversial past, including the time he said Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world, and allegedly using the N-word during a rant to his then-girlfriend. As a sedevacantist, Gibson believes that since the death of Pope Pius XII in 1958 or Pope John the 23rd in 1963, all subsequent popes are not Catholics nor true popes, but instead are heretics because they supported modernism. There was nothing wrong with the Catholic Church before Vatican II's reforms. It didn't need to be fixed. It was doing pretty well, Gibson said. Well, you would expect to hear this from someone who is anti-Semitic and is not Christian, because they weren't doing so well, as a matter of fact. They were killing Christians and persecuting Jews and forcing them to live in ghettos. They've always hated Jews. I think there's going to need to be a house cleaning. You think? Except it won't happen because you can't clean a mud pit. It's going to have to come back to some sort of equilibrium in the future, he said, noting that a cleanup would help the church's image. You know that this harlot is going to rise, so you know that this is all part of that narrative and that support and that effort and that agenda and that movement to hand over power and deceive once again. Vatican II was created to help apply the teachings of Christ to a modern-day life. Oh, okay, Vatican II. Their agenda was to apply the teachings of Christ to a modern-day life, not to apply life to the teachings of Christ. That's always been the agenda of the Catholic Church. Nothing new under the sun right there. Gibson has built a church in Malibu, California, known as the Church of the Holy Family, although it has nothing to do with the Roman Catholic Archdiocese. Right, and I bet that they collect counterfeit tithing too. How special that you get to live in Malibu and have, all of these riches, Mel Gibson. If you know your Bible and you know what Christ was doing, maybe you should get out there and, withhold from yourself. Maybe you should take your wealth and give to the poor or set up a church in a disadvantaged neighborhood. No, that's not what you want to promote, is it? Everything for the greed. You've learned well from your harlot mother. It's not the first time that Gibson has spoken out about certain aspects of the Catholic Church. Well, I don't really see him speaking out about the Catholic Church. He's trying to fix an image. That's what he's trying to do. His agenda is to rebrand the Catholic Church, and that's their agenda as well, and he's being used. Last September, Gibson also spoke out against the Second Vatican Council and endorsed the Coalition for Canceled Priests. Oh, the group was formed in the Chicago suburbs last year to advocate for clerics, it says, have been unfairly removed from the Roman Catholic ministry by bishops for expressing opinions seen as controversial by the church. I mean, if it's run like that, maybe you're being given an opportunity to wake up and discover that this is not God's church. None of the 20 or so priests the coalition supports has been charged with a crime, and some have received no explanation for their exile. Bishops passively sit by and tolerate any kind of nonsense, but if one of their priests utters something that resembles orthodoxy, well, then they spring into action, Gibson said last year. They reprimand him and they bully him and do their best to cancel him. Last month, the West Wing's Joshua Molina branded him a Jew hater in the article for The Atlantic. In 2006, Gibson was pulled over on Malibu's Pacific Coast Highway and detained for DUI. So, in 2004, as I understand it, that's when Passion of the Christ came out. 2 years later, this is the fruit of someone who's in Christ? Come on. While in the back of the police car, Gibson was said to have gone on an anti-Semitic rant after suspecting the arresting officer was Jewish. I'm not going to repeat what he said. Gibson claimed that being under the influence, he had said things he did not believe. Oh no, you believe them. That's his attempt to not take responsibility. Oh, the devil made me do it. So let's take a look at his little timeline here. 2004, Gibson was criticized for his religious zealotry after directing Passion of the Christ in 2004, with the film being panned by critics for featuring anti-Semitic caricatures of Jewish people. The Anti-Defamation League, ADL, released the following statement ahead of the movie's release. The Passion could likely falsify history and fuel the animus of those who hate Jews. 2006, Gibson was arrested in California in 2006 after he was caught drunk driving. The devout Roman Catholic, that is such a joke, was alleged to have told the police officer, I'm not going to say it, the Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. He is then said to have challenged Officer James Mee, are you a Jew? In 2010, Gibson was heard hurling racial abuse at his former girlfriend, Oksana Grigorieva, in a recording made by the Russian singer. In the tape, the Oscar-winning actor was heard screaming profanities, not going to read it. It's pretty vile. It's pretty vile. Gibson pleaded no contest to a charge of misdemeanor battery against Grigorieva in 2011 and served no jail time. 2013, he made statements downplaying the Holocaust. So in 2015, Fox News reported that Gibson gave an interview 2 years prior to former Republican speechwriter Peggy Noonan for Reader's Digest, where he downplayed the number of Jews murdered in the Holocaust. Let me ask you something. Is this the same spirit? Is it the same spirit that persecuted Jews in the Catholic Church? Yes, it is. Of the Holocaust, Gibson told Noonan, I mean, when the war was over, they said it was 12 million, then it was 6, now it's 4. I mean, it's that kind of numbers game. 2020. Actress Winona Ryder, who is Jewish, revealed that the Australian-born actor once asked her at a party whether she was an oven dodger. Oh, charming. Referencing the horrors faced at concentration camps during the Holocaust, Gibson has denied making the remark. Oh, yeah, of course he has, but his history speaks for itself. In his latest movie effort, the faith-based redemption movie about Stuart Long's life, stars devout Catholic Mark Wahlberg, who will portray Long, and co-stars Gibson, who plays his father. Long was a troubled man with a promising boxing career, but whose luck never quite turned around until he found his faith. Okay, I don't care about all this. What I'm trying to say is there's an agenda being executed here. It is very salient to use a movie, and I really encourage you, stop watching movies and shows. Stop occupying yourself with people who want to tell you how to think and want to tell you what you should be interested in. You need to be occupied by the Holy Spirit, who ministers truth to you and tells you what he set you apart to do. You watch these movies, you watch these, listen to commentaries. You need to be careful about how you listen to the news. You need to be discerning. You need to look at what's going on in the world, but from the perspective of what is God doing right now, not what am I being told to think. Because we have a real stupid generation right now who goes onto social media, listens to YouTube, listens to the news, reads these articles, watches a movie that satanic Hollywood puts out, and then they go and make a cause of it, and they start arguing things like it's their own idea. You tried to have a conversation with like a teenager or a young adult right now. Everything that they say, the majority of them, is what they're being brainwashed to believe in university, in their school system, in social media, on Instagram. They don't have thoughts of their own. They don't have wisdom. They don't have understanding. And you know what? Their parents are partly to blame, are in large part to blame, because we just hand our kids a tablet. We just put them in front of the boob tube because we don't want to be bothered to live in the authority, the responsibility that God has given us as parents. It is not an excuse for us to say, well, my parent parented that way and that's why I did blah, blah, blah. That is not an excuse. My parents parented me in a particular way that was not good. And I did do certain things that were not good, but that was my responsibility, and I now need to change what I'm doing with my child. I don't care how old your child is. You need to change the way you're relating with them. If you messed up, you need to acknowledge it. If you're still raising children, take the tablet away, for Pete's sake. Take the technology away and relate with your child and teach them how to be inhabited by God. Stop deferring your responsibilities over to school and Sunday school and other people and technology to raise your kids. And you stop letting people tell you what to think. Pray. Ask God, what's going on right here? How should I understand this one story that I'm reading? I'm seeing, so today I came across, not that long ago, I told you that there are certain things that are going on right now. That devastation is coming. What am I seeing in the news? Train derailments, earthquakes, storms, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods in the Philippines, Japan, China, Italy, hail, fires, leprosy in Florida. What do you think is going on right now? I told you it was going to happen, that you're going to see devastation with your own eyes. You'll see more. It's going to continue, and it's going to increase. Don't let people tell you what to think. Because if you look at that stuff, you're going to go, oh, this has always been going on. This is climate change or whatever else. And then you're just going to rest on your lazy laurels and you're not going to understand. You're going to hear people like Wahlberg, Gibson, Caviezel, you're going to hear them say, oh, we're devout. We're devout. Christians? This is not Christian. This was after directing the movie, The Passion of the Christ. If there was anything Christian going on, why is this man being picked up for a DUI 2 years later and he's ranting about Jews? Is this a person who should have anything to do with God's house? Well, I'll tell you right now, he does not. He is not doing the Lord's work. He's not even willing to bear the fruit of repentance. This is disgusting. This is not of God. This is a distraction from the Catholic Church. You heard it in the interview that he'll go in on Hollywood, but it's just stuff when the Catholic Church does it. Come on, you guys. It needs to be, reframed as a place for good. How come he's not saying that about Hollywood? How come he's not trying to clean up Hollywood? Oh, well, you might say because Hollywood is a pit. Yeah, and you're right. Hollywood is a pit. It's disgusting. But why is it that we don't see that about the Catholic Church? Why doesn't he see it that way with the Catholic Church? Because that's worldwide. That is worldwide. No, this is an agenda. This is part of what will contribute to the rise of that beast. Please discern this message with God.